Good morning and welcome to Thursday's reflection on Holy Week. Let's begin with a prayer. Lord, in these days of uncertainty and unrest, remind us that that first Easter was the same in a troubled city, in a troubled land. And your word then was powerful. May your word to us in these days be powerful too. Amen. Now, obviously, it's Thursday, so that tends to include the story of the Last Supper. But I want to read a little extract from the day before, and it's just after Jesus pays tribute to the unknown woman that we talked about yesterday. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. So he watched for an opportunity to hand him over. And then moving on to Thursday evening. When evening came, Jesus arrived with the 12. While they were reclining at the table eating, he said, "I tell you the truth, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." I want us to think of Judas today. It is the Last Supper, and of course Jesus is aware he's going to be betrayed, and the figure of Jesus has always been problematic. Often folk have said to me, so why did Judas betray Jesus? Well, I think there are many different answers to that. One is that he did it for the money. It says there about going to the priests and they were going to give him a financial reward. And of course, in John's Gospel, we read that he was considered to be a thief. He was the treasurer of the group and he had control of the money bag. And John indicates that it was thought he was helping himself to the money. My problem with that is that could have been that he was suspected, but nothing definite because he was never called out on it, and no evidence is offered in the Gospels that that was the case. But after the event, it could well be when the Gospels were being written that Judas was seen as being in it for the money. But I don't think that that's the principal cause. A second possibility is that he was angry at Jesus, that he was so disappointed that Jesus had turned out not to be the Messiah he was hoping for. And of course, there are good reasons for that. There's the story of Jesus being approached by the crowds long before he ever went to Jerusalem after one of his miracles. They wanted to make him king. And someone like Judas and other of the disciples who were wanting the Messiah to come in power and force must have thought, this is the moment. But Jesus declined all of that. And then going to Jerusalem, and of course the triumphal entry into the city, Judas might have thought, hey, this is the moment now. The crowds are on our side. Followed the following day with the protest in the temple, the excitement would have started to rise, and then a lull, and Judas wondering what on earth's going on. And finally, the straw that broke the camel's back. The evening where the unknown woman pours ointment on him is rebuked by the disciples, but Jesus, in a sense, gives her tribute because she gets what's happening. And at that point, Judas might have thought, hang on a minute, Jesus is determined to die. He wants to die. He's not the Messiah. And out of anger and a sense of betrayal, that Judas would have thought he was being betrayed by Jesus. Jesus had turned out to be a false Messiah. In anger, he then betrayed Jesus to the authorities. Or a third possibility, that Judas hoped to manipulate the situation so Jesus would be forced to act. There was a lull, things weren't happening, he was frustrated. Maybe Jesus just needed an extra wee push, and if confronted by the authorities, Jesus would have to act. After all, what was in his favour was all the pilgrims there for Passover. It was a volatile time. Now was the time to announce a revolution. Now was the time to act. If Jesus was pushed into a corner, perhaps he would declare himself to be the Messiah. It's that third one that I like. And the reason is in Matthew's Gospel, we're told about Judas's response when Jesus is condemned. When Judas hears that Jesus has been condemned, he's filled with remorse. He takes the money back to the temple authorities and he goes out and he hangs himself. That indicates to me that from Judas's point of view, this outcome was not the one he was expecting. And therefore, realizing he had made a terrible mistake, was filled with remorse and guilt. Yet in the providence of the story, within the story itself, the providence of God is at work in and through these events. Now what we have here is God's agenda and human agenda. Judas and some of the other disciples were caught up in their agenda of what things were right and what things were wrong, what the Messiah was meant to be. Jesus didn't live up to these expectations. He challenged these expectations and understandings. What about us today? Is that not a message for the church? There's God's agenda for today and there's our agenda. And even as individuals, that's the case. That's a wee challenging message for us. Not just for Easter time, but after Easter. Who are we? Why are we here? What does God want of us? Thank you for listening. As always, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you tomorrow.